In our implementation manual, you can find a definition of the audit trail, which is a chronological set of accounting records that provide documentary evidence of the sequence of steps undertaken by the beneficiaries and program bodies for implementing an approved projects. Those are both accounting records and documentary, which every project partner are obliged to collect and be ready to present not only to the national controllers, but also to the other controlling bodies, program bodies, and also outside. For example, in the old program, we experienced the control of the European Court of Auditor on our program, but also some projects were audited as a part of the program. So both the partners, all partners, and also the national controllers have this obligation of keeping the proper audit trail. Which documents are to be kept at the level of each partner? So of course it is the subsidy contract. It is a document which is signed between the lead partner and the managing authority of the program, but it is important to know the all provision of this document also by the other partners, and to have this document available in partners institution. The second document is partnership agreement, always the latest version of the application form with all the amendments. So every time you will apply for some changes, you need to remember to keep the latest version and to present this version in case of some controls, and to also provide it to the national controllers. You are obliged to keep the documentation of all outputs and deliverables produced, documents proving the expenditure incurred and paid, documents related to all procurement procedures implemented, any other supporting documents for particular budget lines. Here I will explain you more later on during this presentation what are those documents. Apart from that, you also need to keep in your files the physical and financial reports submitted to national controllers. Of course, the documents issued by the national controllers, so certificate, control, checklist, and control report, as well as a copy of all these joint project reports, preferably in PDF version. For now, when starting implementing the project, you need to remember that in your institution you need to set a separating accounting system, or to have an adequate accounting code which is related to the project. That in your institution, among all the expenditure, is really easy to identify which expenditure are related to this project. You also need to remember to organize from the beginning the physical or electronic archive for keeping all the documents. So to preparing your filing system and to think about place where to keep the documents. There are different requirements in different countries. Sometimes basically the requirement is to keep all originals or certified copies, but in some countries you have just e-archive electronic system. Either you are scanning the documents and keeping them somewhere, but in case you have original, you need to really pay attention that the scanned documents are the same as the originals, or you have just e-system, and in this case, you need to remember to fulfill all security standards and to ensure that this e-archive is fulfilling also the national requirements for storing the documents. It is also very important to remember that and somehow to mark the expenditure in order to avoid the double financing, so not to have the problems that the one cost is assigned to more than one project, or in the transparent way to market. That's why there is a need to use a stamp bearing at least the following information. The information that the project is, that the expenditure has been co-financed by the Interreg CENTRAL EUROPE program. On the stamp, the number and acronym of the project should be given, and it can be the case that the same document covers different expenditure related to also co-finance from different sources. So in the transparent way, it should be marked what is the share of expenditure claim in the concerned project, so in the Central Europe project. Of course, as I said, some invoices can be available only in the electronic version. So in this, you need to also pay attention how the invoice should be described, also to require the proper description from the service provider and so on, so that in the subject, in the body of the electronic document, also those relevant information, so the co-financing source, so Interreg Central Europe program, the number and the acronym of the project are mentioning, and also the proper description, for example, of the service provided. You are obliged to keep those documents for the certain period. So for the they must remain available at your institution for a period of 3 years. And when this period starts, starts from 31st December, following the submission of the payment claim to the European Commission by the managing authority, that contains the last expenditure of your project after it is completed. So basically, of course, we will then in some closure letter will inform you about this retention periods, because then you cannot know exactly when we have submitted your last expenditure payment claim, including your last expenditure to the European Commission. There are also some, in your project you can have some activities and related costs to consider as the stated relevant, or the granted, so the amount were granted under the de minimis. So in this case, the period for retention of all the documents which are related to those activities as the expenditure should be kept for 10 years, fiscal years from the date on which the aid was granted, and the date of granting the aid is the date of signing the subsidy contract. So there are some special requirements for the state aid relevant activities. Now I would like to say a few words about proper audit trail and proper documentation to be collected for every budget line. So we have 6 budget lines. We start with the first one, which is staff cost. For the staff cost, as you know, we have 2 reimbursement options. So the cost can be reimbursed based on the real cost, or it can be this 20% flat rate of the direct costs. So basically, for the real costs, you have here the list of the expenditure, this list of the documents. This is employment document, job description, proof of the latest annual gross employment cost, calculation of the hourly rate, project assigning document, periodic staff report, timesheets, and payslip. Of course, here in this table you can see the different calculation methods which you are choosing, and depending on the method which you decided to use, you will need to collect the relevant documents. So please refer always to this table, and to the this table is included in also in the implementation manual, and to check which documents you need for which calculation option. There are also some disclaimers for some, for example, for some documents you are obliged to provide just once at the beginning of the project implementation, or using this calculation method. So here I think it is very well presented in the transparent way which documents you need. For some of the documents, like periodic staff report, timesheets, we have our program templates. They are available in the toolbox for which is some kind of this part of the referring to the implementation manual, and you can use, or you are for some templates you are even obliged to use them. With regard to the flat rate, different reimbursement option, which is 20% of the direct costs other than staff costs. In this case, I don't know if there are any partners who decided to use this reimbursement option, because for this reimbursement option you had to choose it already in the application form. So in case anybody of you decided to use this one, so in this case no documentation is needed, so you are not collecting any documents, you are not providing into the first to the national controllers. This amount is calculated automatically based on the direct costs other than staff costs. There is only one requirement. So the partner has to present that at least one employee was involved in the project in the reporting period. And how to do it? You need to provide the self-declaration, which is signed by the authorized person or legal representative, or other authorized person by the legal representative, and this is sufficient proof for using this option. If you will not provide this document to national controller, the cost can be not eligible. This option is also can be used by, for example, small companies having just owner of the company. In this case, the owner of the company signing this declaration that he is or will be working in the this reporting period for the project. So this is sufficient to claim those costs. With regards to the office and administration expenditure, those costs are reimbursed based on the according to the flat rate of 15%. They are automatically calculated, so here there is no need to provide any documents to national controller. The next budget line is travel and accommodation costs. Here there is a set of the required documents. First of all, you would need to have the authorization of the mission, in which you need to indicate the destination, start and date of the mission. Then you of course need to have the proof of costs and mission, so all invoices, boarding passes, or travel tickets, train tickets, plane tickets, other things. In case you would decide to use the company on private car, you will need to provide the mileage calculation or invoices, and then to also calculate it according to the national rule. For example, there is the cost for per kilometer or other things which you need to take into account. Then you would need to present reimbursement request. So this comes from the employee. It is either based on the per diems, or it can be on real cost in this case, or documents should be attached according to the rules. Proof of payment or the reimbursement, so either all the bank statements that the expenditure were paid, or some extract from the partner accounting system is to be provided. And also all the other documents, not only boarding passes, but agenda, for example, invitation to the meeting, everything what proves your your travel to this event meeting. For the external expertise and services costs, of course, there are a bit different requirements because of the nature of those costs. So first of all, you need to provide and collect first and provide to national controller, and then to keep for the relevant period of time evidence of the selection procedure. Relevant procedure for depending of the type of the beneficiary and the amount contracted, and selection procedure which is in line either in EU or national or program rules. You need to remember to conclude the contract or have some written agreement specifying what is the service, to which project it is related by giving the project name, acronym, and so on, and yes, specifying the service. In case you will do any amendments to the contract, please also remember to document this properly, and also refer back to the selection procedure if any amendment is allowed to do it, taking into account, for example, public procurement rules or not. Always please provide deliverable produce, not only some studies, but also for the promotional material, some examples, some photos, or in case there was some meeting, so evidence can be the photo, agenda, list of participants, and so on. Invoice, you need to provide for the services which will fulfill all the national requirements, and clearly stating that the service to which project it is referring to, and co-financing source, and so on. And of course proof of payment, which is again the bank statement of the extract from the partner accounting system. Next budget line is equipment expenditure. So here again, evidence of the proper selection procedure according to the EU national or program rules, and you are deciding which type of the beneficiaries you are to use, also the proper procedure, and what is the amount of the contract on written agreement, fulfilling all the requirements as for the previous budget line. As I told you, in case you will use a calculation scheme of the depreciation, in case the depreciation is applicable, you would need to provide a calculation scheme, invoice or document of equivalent probative value, also fulfilling of the requirements, proof of payment, which is also the for example, bank statement. Maybe just comment here, because yesterday we received a question during our financial help desk. There were some lead partners asking in the equipment which is purchased before the project start date, office equipment can be eligible, so that it can be if it was not yet depreciated, so that depreciation can be charged to the project, but only if this equipment, this office equipment, is solely used for the project. So this is the answer to this question. And now we can, I think, go to the last budget line, which is infrastructure and work expenditure. Here there are some extra documents, requirements which needs to be fulfilled, and documents collected. So first of all, in case the ownership of long-term agreements legal documents confirming either the ownership of the land of building, or these legal documents which confirm that for the certain period of time that the maintenance and durability of the investment, for example, will be fulfilled. So that this first need to be collected. So then there are the necessary permissions, so building permit, for example, before starting some works, for example. Of course, contract on written agreements, fulfilling all the requirements, also, as I said, for the previous budget lines. First, before that, of course, selection procedure and relevant invoice and proof of payments, bank statement of the extract from the relevant accounting system should be available for that.